Okay, let's do a quick scene breakdown of this one right here, and I'll just kind of walk you through what I was thinking and how I put this together and how all this stuff kind of fits together and kind of makes this whole scene. So yeah, in this one, I will show you how I put this whole scene together, where I got these models, a really easy trick to create neon signs like this that you can use for just unlimited neon signs really easily, how I did the lighting, volumetrics, all the camera settings, explained as easy as I can. So should be a fun one, and let's go. I think a good place to start is by just kind of looking around the scene, and then I'll get into all the things I layered on top of this base foundation of stuff here and how all that became the final image. So what I'm in here right now is it's not material preview, it's actually just solid view, but instead of the color set to this gray, it's just set to texture right here. And I'm just gonna walk around and kind of show you what is happening here. It's not anything crazy. So these buildings, I did not make in this scene. I made some of these before in previous projects, like a year ago or something. And some of these are also from the Kit Bash pack. I think it's the Warzone pack. So there's a lot of destroyed stuff and rubble at the bottom of these buildings, but I didn't really end up showing a lot of that in the final artwork. I just threw some buildings in and they happened to be kind of destroyed, and I wasn't really sure where I was going with that, but in the final thing, you can't really tell that they're all destroyed in Warzone, so that's whatever. Just happened to be like that. A lot of these buildings are also from the Cyberpunk Kit Bash as well, and that's really nice because a lot of these come with, if I go to render view, a lot of these come with neon signs and just big LED advertisements and stuff already built into the building model, like you can see here. So this is one building that just came with all this stuff already on it, so that made it really easy to just layer in a ton of detail by just throwing in these pre-made building models that already have advertisements all stuck to the outside of them. So there's these big clusters in the scene like this that you'll see that just have a lot of glowing advertisements on them that helps just fill out detail in the back, and I just don't have to worry about it. I kept them in the back because this is a public pack that anyone can get, so a lot of people do have access to the same models here. So if I put it right smack in the middle, in the foreground, it's going to be obvious of what pack I'm using, and I just kind of wanted to hide it a little bit, but still use it to just fill out detail a little bit. So anyways, I hope that gives you a basic understanding of what's happening here in this base level thing that I kind of put together of just clusters of buildings that I already made, or just random pieces of like just grungy stuff I made in other projects. It's just kind of a city block at the fundamental level with nothing special. So if you don't have any building models, either go make some or go download some. Again, the pack I'm using here is the Warzone Kit Bash or the Cyberpunk Kit Bash from Kit Bash 3D. Those packs are a little pricey, but you can just make your own if you want. There's tons of tutorials on that. I guess I should talk about the floor here before I go on too, because this rainy, like reflective, wet floor, this is a pretty important part of a lot of these cyberpunk renders that I do, or that anyone does. If it's raining, you want to get the floor to look nice and reflective, and it just somebody asked why do you always see like rainy, reflective, like wet floors everywhere in Cyberpunk? It's because like it just brings out the best of what you're trying to capture here with all these neon signs, and like it's just bright and glowing, and when you have reflections of that in the floor, it almost like doubles up all of the stuff you have, and it just makes it look so much cooler. I don't know why exactly that happens, but it just looks nice when you have a rainy floor, a wet like concrete floor. It's really nice. So anyways, this is just, I did a whole video on this, but I'll just quickly show you here. It's just, if I go to material preview, basically the way you get this effect is, it's set up kind of weird in here, but the way you do it is you get any concrete texture that comes with, a regular base color, roughness, normal map. That's all you need. And then all you do is just lower the roughness, either with a color ramp, or you can honestly just unplug the roughness map and drag it all the way to 0 on the roughness. And then what you do is you just take any other roughness map or a noise texture or just any map with a variation in the brightness, and you use that map to influence the strength of the original normal map. So you can see here in the normal map, there is a strength input like this. So what you do, there's other stuff going on in mine with roughness variation. You don't really need that, but you'll get pretty much the same look if you just do this. you have a regular normal map going through here. You take any other thing, could be a noise texture, just variation with noise, could be a different roughness map from another texture, could be anything with color variation or brightness variation, and you plug that into the strength of this normal map, and you can use a color ramp to just adjust that. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you some really rough spots that are like the full normal map strength, and then it's going to give you some really reflective areas where it's kind of just looking like a perfectly smooth puddle. And that's how you get this realistic looking concrete, is just doing that. So anyways, that's the floor. You just use any method you want to get a wet floor. You don't even have to use that if you don't want, but that's what I'm using. And so right now, if we go to render view, this is what it looks like. If we just pull this up here. Pitch black pretty much, except for those things in the back. But I'll turn on these neon signs, which is one of the first things I added. And this is one of the core elements to this piece, is all this glowing shit in the center. So let's look at what this is. I'm just going to select everything I just brought in, and let's isolate it with backslash. And we'll go to render view, and let's take a closer look, because this looks hard to make at first when you first see that. If you've never done this kind of stuff before, you might see that and go like, how do you get, like, it's just like overwhelming. Like, how do you make all that and do it quickly and not like kill yourself doing it? Well, this is how. So first of all, you'll see that everything's made out of these dots. So the way I did that is I actually have a picture. I think I took a picture on my phone of my computer screen. So this here is a picture. I guess I'll full screen this so you can actually see what this is. A picture of, literally, I took a picture of my computer screen on my phone, just super up close, fully zoomed in. And then it's just, the individual pixels of my actual screen are on here. So I took that, and then that's what's driving the alpha in my neon sign here. So it's just, I'll show you where to get something like this in a second, but it's this picture, could be any picture you want, running into the emission color, and the alpha is being driven by that, like this computer screen image, and that's what gives it this like hologram type look. It's not that visible in here, but if you were to take an up close shot, and I think in some of the signs, if you zoom in, you could really see that effect, and it just looks really nice up close like that. And obviously, you can adjust that and make it however strong you want. So that's what's happening with the alpha and that hologram type look. But the actual sign itself, this is something that confused me for a long time, and I struggled to get signs like this for a long time, and I just like I was so curious how you would get like so much variation in all these different textures, and like how do you do that in Blender when you're just like one guy trying to put like a million advertisements together. It's tricky. The way I found that's the best way is go to textures.com or any other place where you can find a stock photo website that has like a single image that has like a cluster of neon signs on it. So I just went to textures.com. They have, I'm sure if you just look around, you'll find it. Just a big cluster of a bunch of different neon signs all in the same image makes it really easy to make this stuff. And so I'll show you exactly how you do this. Basically, you take one sign. So you just take this image, run that into the emission. There's all this other nonsense happening here. Just ignore this. Like, it's pretty much this picture right here running into the emission color with, like, it's getting turned a little bit blue. Like, that's all that's happening. It's, getting desaturated a little bit. There's a curves. That doesn't really matter. It's mostly just this right here, just getting turned a little bit blue. If I hide that, it's like kind of the same, except for the thing that's running into alpha, that computer screen texture. So you just run that into the emission color, run any, could be horizontal lines, I've done that before, or just a grid or anything with a screen type texture into the alpha, and that's how you get this look. And then the way you get variations of that is very easy. You just take that, you duplicate it anywhere, and then in your UV editor, if I click on this texture, that'll swap the image in the UV editor here. You just go to edit mode. As long as you press Shift D when you move this around, you won't mess up the original one. And then all you do is you just move this to different parts of the UV map, and you have pretty much unlimited variation in the amount of neon signs that you can get. There's a lot in here that you can work with. And so what you do is just do this over and over again, and very quickly you'll get like tons of different signs that are all unique to themselves, and you don't have to worry about like making 1,000 different textures. You just do it with one texture, and then you can tweak. When I tweak the brightness or the color on one of these, it affects all of them, and that's a really easy way to just keep it all cohesive if you want. Or you can make the color different on all of them if you want to. One setting that's really nice to have on when you're doing this method is this. If you go to edit mode and you click this options menu right here. Sorry, this is so small here. You click the options menu right here. There's this setting right here called correct face attributes. And what that means is normally if I turn that off, normally when you pull, like say if I grab an edge in edit mode and I pull that down, you can see that'll just do what you expect. It kind of stretches the texture with it, which is very annoying. If you just enable this setting, when you stretch an edge now, or you pull an edge down, it'll just expand the texture without stretching it from wherever it makes sense to go. So that's really nice for things like this, where, say I have this little box here, and say I want to extend it over this whole red panel. I can just go like this and kind of just crop it manually using the edges in edit mode like this. And that's really nice to just easily, like crop what you want to be shown in the UV editor without like, scaling it and stretching it all weird. So that's how I make this type of neon signs too. And you can also use the color of this image. You can also use the color of this image to drive the alpha as well. Like if you don't want a square background, as long as the text is brighter or darker than the background, you can just use that, depending on the image, to drive what is transparent or not. So you would just take this, like this picture right here, and you'd run that into the alpha instead of that computer screen image. And you could also even multiply the computer screen image on top of that as well to get like both effects at the same time. Point is, you can go crazy with it, but this is the basic method, is you just take something like this. You could even stitch together your own if you wanted, like get a bunch of neon signs, slap them all in the same Photoshop document in just like a grid or something, and then use that as, like I'm showing here, just use that as a bunch of them in Blender. That's a really easy way to do it. But here's how I did it for this one, just because, that was just easy, it made sense, and no problem. And then, you just do that, you just repeat it, find a few different images that have different, clusters of signs, and then before you know it, like here's another one, before you know it, you'll have tons of them, and then you just throw that on and duplicate a few of them around. If you have the same one duplicated a few times, no one's going to notice, as long as you do it, tastefully, no problem. And then before you know it, your scene is like fully full of neon signs, and it's great. So that's awesome. And you can see everywhere I've put this in the scene, it's the same couple of signs duplicated all around, and it's just when it's far away and reorganized and things are put in a different order, it's totally fine to do that. Things like this are from Kitbash. I didn't make these. I just dropped in the assets from the Kitbash library. This is from the Cyberpunk one, the Cyberpunk Kitbash. And yeah, that's how I did all the neon signs. It's like just those, and then supplemented with, again, those things in the back are just from the Cyberpunk Kitbash here and there. Makes it look a little bit nicer, so it's not all the exact same thing. Like there's a few in here that are just 3D, from the Kitbash pack. That's really nice. And then, with the reflective floor, with the volumetrics, I guess I'll show the volumetrics here, but yeah, that's pretty much all that is. Pretty simple. So the volume is just this cube right here. Same method I've showed in all my other videos. It's just add a cube, display it as bounds in the orange square tab right here, go to viewport display as bounds, and then just throw a volume scatter node on that cube right there. Here's the settings I'm using. Something like that will work in that range-ish of whatever this is. And there you go. That's, just adds atmosphere, fog. Okay, let's keep going down the list of stuff that I have in here. So the next thing is more of those neon things, but this one's a bit special. So let's look at this. You will notice that this is the Blender node editor as a texture in the render. So if we look at this, you probably noticed it already right when you saw it, because it's, if you ever use Blender, you kind of know what that is. But yeah, that's in here a lot. So this stuff on the side is just a screenshot, which I'll show you in a second, of the node editor that I was working with in here, and I just put that texture like on an emissive plane, ran it to the emission color, ran it through the alpha, and then pretty much that was it. Made it a bit blue, same techniques I just showed, and that is just getting used as a texture here. I don't really know what it's supposed to be, but it looked cool, and I just threw it in. Like, you know, what I'm making here is not supposed to be realistic. Like, this is not a realistic thing to do. You wouldn't see, you know, this in real life, but it's just fun. It's just cool. It's fun, and that's what this is all about. I'm having fun. I'm making stuff I like. I'm making stuff I think is cool, and that is the only thing that's ever worked for me. Is just making stuff that I think is cool and fun. So that's why that's in here. Don't ask me what it means or why it's it's not really realistic, but that's what's going on here. So if I look at the screenshot, I'll show you how I did this. Kind of fun. Yeah, this is not my actual node setup. I think it was, but I made it over the top to specifically use as this texture. So if I look at what's actually important here, this section right here, this would be, I think this too, this would be the texture, like this right there. You can see like that's actually running to the material output right here. There's one here that got duplicated. That's not actually the one that I used. So that thing I just circled, that's what's actually the texture. And then all I did for this other stuff around here, that's all just the same little couple of pieces duplicated around here for no reason. Like all you do is you just take like, if we go and look at this, like in the shader editor, for example, like this is the actual shader editor. What you would do is just take this, duplicate it, add like random nodes all over the place. Doesn't matter. Just get it to look cool, and then you screenshot that. Literally take a screenshot of your computer and then use that as a texture. That's what I did, and that's how I got this effect right here. And you could totally go crazy with that and make an entire render just out of this alone, because it's just a cool little texture that the Blender people recognize. And yeah, just throw it on a plane in there. And it's actually used quite a lot in here. If I hide the neon signs and just look at that only, I guess you already saw, it's used a lot, and it's just kind of a cool way to add a bunch of detail in here that doesn't really make that much sense, but looks kind of cool. Let's keep going with all the other stuff in here. Something I always like adding to Cyberpunk / like industrial / sci-fi renders is garbage. If I turn this on, yeah, I just love, for some reason, adding just a level of grunginess and grit and garbage and not keeping it clean. Like I really like having a level of like grunginess in cyberpunk scenes like this. And it's just, I don't know, it just makes it darker, and I like that. So let's look at what this is. These are garbage bags from Quixel Megascans. I think if you go on Quixel Bridge and you just search garbage bag, you'll find this exact one. It's like the pack of 4. So it's like 4 different trash bags. I just put them together into a cluster, did a couple of variations of that with just a different order of like putting the bags in. And then I just duplicated that cluster of 4 bags around a bunch of different times. So you can see just where it needs to be, like in where the camera can see it in the foreground. It just creates like a nice little, I don't know. It's just kind of cool how, I thought it was cool how in this picture, there's like a crowd of people, and then we're behind the garbage in the back, in the corner, like looking out of this trash mess. I thought that was kind of a cool perspective. That means whatever you want it to mean, I guess, but it's just kind of cool, I thought. And yeah, just garbage bags from Quixel. These decals on the floor, which I'll show you in a second, if we look at that, these things right here, if I just isolate this, let's go to material preview. This is just, it's one of the decals from Quixel, but it's just basically a regular texture with it comes with an alpha map. So you can see there's this map right here, the opacity map running into the alpha. So other than that, it's just a regular texture of just garbage. So that works perfect for this. So all I did was take one of those, put it on a plane, and then put it on the floor, right above the floor, so it's not clipping, but just a millimeter above. And then, yeah, that just adds a layer of like more trash on the floor. And it's just one of those just duplicated a bunch of times and then spammed around. And then just, again, makes it more dirty, more grungy, darker, all the stuff I like with Cyberpunk renders. Okay, let's keep going. And there's a few other models in here that are like dumpsters and stuff. Those are from Kitbash. I think the City Streets pack, if I go here. I've got a lot of these Kitbash packs, which I use for Cyberpunk stuff. The City Streets pack comes with, let me just find it because I can just show you. City Streets pack just comes with, benches, barriers, dumpsters, traffic lights, city streets type stuff is all in there. So that's what that is, just random models from there that I just chucked in that are just done to add to this, make it feel more alive and city-ish, and yeah. And finally, let's talk about the people in here. So I think I've done a video on how to add people to your renders, but this is just a pack of models from, I can't remember who made it, but it's one of the packs on CG Trader. If you just type in like low poly people or like low poly crowds pack or something like that, you'll find probably this exact one. Basically, none of these models are very high quality on their own. You can see like very low poly, pretty not good quality, but for just throwing in a crowd, like this was one model from the entire pack that I just threw on here. Like if I find this here, this pack right here, I don't know how you say that, TREAPLE, people pack. Just search that on CG Trader, you'll find it. Anyways, it comes with individual models of people and also just these preset crowds, which is really nice because you just take one of these, drop it in, and instantly, I don't know why I went there, but instantly you have a crowd of people just fully done, textured, put into like a natural position, fully done instantly, which is extremely nice for cyberpunk renders like this, where it's just, you know what, I've got a city street, I want people, boom, done, finished, don't even think about it, and move on to something else. So nice to just have that like instantly done. So I would definitely recommend just getting a pack like this. It's going to cost a bit of money, but honestly, if you're watching this channel, you're probably like somebody who's at least somewhat serious about this, so just get it, like it's worth it. And I'm not affiliated or anything, it's just a good pack that I use. Okay, I think that's all the objects in here, so I hope that kind of helps you understand how I put this together in 3D. And then, once I rendered this, let's look at the settings really quick. 512 samples. I could have gone lower, honestly, like could have like 100 or 200 and it probably would have looked the same. The resolution is 3000 by 3750 at 100%, so just that. I don't know, that's just what I do. Some people go like 4000 by 5000, but I find that's just like unnecessarily big for what I do. And, camera settings. This is set to 22 millimeters. So I've mentioned this before, but if you take out your phone and you go to like the main front camera, or I guess back camera, like when you take a picture of something, the main camera that your phone uses, that's going to be about 24 millimeters probably, unless you have a weird phone. It's probably going to be about 24 millimeters. So this is just slightly wider than that. So there's 24, 22, not a huge difference, just, that looked good. Depth of field is on, but it's turned up, the f-stop is turned up pretty high, so the depth of field, like the amount of blur you're getting here, is not very much. It's just barely noticeable. If I open this up, we can take a look at how much is actually on there. I'd say it's only really visible in like this corner right here. Just softens out this maybe a little bit. It's honestly barely noticeable. That could even just be the lens distortion alone doing that. So really not important at all to add depth of field to something like this. With a wide angle lens, it doesn't really matter. But that does bring me to this, which is the compositing settings I always use. Just running it through a denoise node with denoising data enabled. That's over here if you don't know. So in this tab, passes data, denoising data gives you you just check that box, render, then you get these extra passes to normal and albedo. I think it's the same as using the checkbox though with the, it's the same as using this, so use whatever denoising you want. And then the lens distortion. So this is just set to 0.0055. That's just the default value I have on my scene that I just leave on there. So when I open my default blender, that's just on there. And yeah, that just adds a nice amount of just fringing, like this little amount of distortion around the edge. Just looks really nice. As long as you don't go overkill, it looks nice. And yeah. So anyways, that's everything in Blender. And that looks like this. Straight out of Blender, looks like this. And after running it through Photoshop, I've showed my Photoshop process on here before. It's nothing crazy. It's like just increase contrast, increase saturation, increase sharpness, increase clarity. Do a bit of dodging and burning with make some parts darker, make some parts lighter. And then there you go. It'll pretty much look like this. Add grain. And there you go. It's, I also threw on a layer of dust and scratches. You could just go on Google, type in free dust and scratches pack. You'll find a bunch of them. I threw on one of those. And that was pretty much it. Like, not anything that crazy. If you do need to see my Photoshop workflow, exactly what I do in the camera filter, I do have an old video on my channel. I should probably do a newer one, but there's an old video showing exactly what I do. It hasn't really changed much from then, so just go watch that. So it's like titled "How to Make Your Renders Look Better in Photoshop," something like that. Just scroll back on my channel, you'll find it. I'm not going to link it, but it's there. So yeah, that's that. Okay, one thing I actually missed here was this last collection of extra point lights. And there's one area light, but it's just, yeah, extra lights in here that are adding just a little bit of extra flavor, as you would say, to the render. So what this is doing, if I look at this, these lights around here, if you can kind of see what this is, there's just some point lights at the bottom, 4 of them, and one area at the top. I'll talk about the area light in a second, but these point lights are all using the same settings, so let's just look at one of these. What this is doing is, if I turn it on and off, just adding a little bit of extra glow and just vibes to certain areas of this render. So you can see when I turn it off, something is just not quite as vibrant and bright, and just something is missing. And that's what this is doing right here. It's just adding that little bit of extra glow and just brightness to things that just kind of need it. So here's the settings. It's just 40,000 watts with a blue light, 2 meter size-ish. That light is just duplicated a few times around here. So you can see there's one in the alley here. None of them are visible to the camera. They're all kind of tucked away, except for maybe one way in the distance. But pretty much for the most part, they're all tucked away. And they're just lighting up areas that I thought should be a bit brighter, that the neon signs weren't cutting it in. So you can see it just kind of helps silhouette the crowd here. Just helps add a bit of like light in the back of the scene, just to make it feel more alive, and like there's stuff going on in other areas. And that was exactly what this is for. So that's what that's doing. I don't think there's anything else I need to talk about with this one. Yeah, so hopefully that gives you some ideas for some cyberpunk neon stuff you can make on your own. And yeah. Oh, as a side note too, I did just add a cyberpunk bonus module to the course where I created this render from start to finish, all the way from scratch to finished, along with, you know, there's a bunch of other stuff in there too. I'm sure you've heard about it. Go check it out. There's like 300 people that have joined already. And yeah, that's it. Okay, cool. I'll see you in some other video. Bye.